Hello, welcome to this presentation on the TrueFeed, now with touchscreen control. TrueFeed is an additive feeder made for mounting to the throat of an injection molding or an extrusion machine. And with this new control, we have a lot of new advanced features we can talk about. Let's start with a little review of the TrueFeed gravimetric feeder. First, the TrueFeed is actually made for pellets and free-flowing powders. It can be used with some free-flowing regrinds as well. Now, this is a very compact machine. You can see that it's only 16 inches high and 18 inches long, and it has what might be categorized as a mid-range of throughput in the world of feeding at the throat metering devices. And in fact, here are the metering rates. We can go from 0.02 to 50 grams per second. That is a very, very low range, as you can see, and all the way from 0.15 up to 400 pounds per hour. So this is not a device for shoveling a lot of material into the throat of a machine, but it is certainly a precision machine that will handle rates actually very, very high, all the way up to 400 pounds per hour. Now, one of the unique things about the TrueFeed, and it's been this way since its inception, and it has a patented no-pulse dosing system that we're going to talk about a little bit more detail later. Its accuracy is stated to be plus or minus 1% of the set additive rate, but typically it can be found, when tested, it's found to be within the plus or minus 0.5%. Another benefit of this is that this thing virtually falls apart in your hands. It can be disassembled and cleaned in 60 seconds and put back into service. That's unbelievable. And if you check the Conair website or Conair on YouTube, you can actually see a video of this device being taken apart and cleaned in 60 seconds. Like many throat feeders on the market, this will handle both injection and extrusion operation. Injection, where it will be tied to the cycles of the injection machine, and of course extrusion, where it will be tied to the extrusion rate, and then it will mark right along with the extrusion rate as it goes up or down. Here is a picture of the TrueFeed with its throat adapter. The TrueFeed would be the device on the right with the silver hopper, the motor, and so forth, and then the throat adapter is the square device that it is connected to. The throat adapter, of course, would mount to the throat of the molding machine and would contain a supply hopper bolted to the top of it. As you can see, the throat adapter can actually accommodate up to 4 throat feeders in 4 different positions. It is self-calibrating, and by that we mean that is a very short way of saying that it is a gravimetric feeder. It works on a loss and weight principle, so it is more or less self-calibrating. Whatever it puts out, it will keep track of it by weighing the supply hopper. As the supply from the hopper diminishes, the control keeps track of that. It gives a very, very, very accurate reading of the exact metering rate. It can be equipped with a hand fill lid, as we show in these pictures right here, or it can be equipped with a loader fill. We actually make a compressed air loader to keep that supply hopper filled. And before you think about it too hard, we have to remember that because that hopper is actually floating on a load cell, you have to be a little bit careful about when you load that. You have to load that in sequence with the weighing cycle. And so the control of the TrueFeed actually tells the loader when to operate. And so getting a compressed air loader option for this device is a very, very good option. One of the main benefits of this is the reduced use of additives. Because we are weighing the loss in weight of the additives, you do not need to overdose to make sure you reach your additive requirement. Very repeatable output. So day in and day out, 24 hours, 365 days a year, this thing will put out exactly the same amount of additive. Very, very reliable, and once again monitored through gravimetric technology. Accurate, low rates easily attained. Yes, and we'll show you a little bit more on that. Optional, some things to think about. Water-cooled throat adapter. So that a throat adapter that mounts to the throat of the machine. If you have a lot of heat coming out of the screw of your machine, a water-cooled throat adapter can be substituted. Down below we see a slide mount. This allows the feeder to be retracted from the throat adapter in a very kind of elegant fashion. That allows you to catch and weigh the output of that, and you can use that for your own calibration proof or for any benefit that you have. And then, of course, as we mentioned, we can put in additive loaders. I want to call your attention to that little picture in the lower right. What that is, you can see pellets. Those look pretty obvious there. And then a red frame around the outside. That is, in fact, the throat adapter. And in the middle of that throat adapter, we call it a doghouse. But what it is it is a little tunnel that is created. It creates a void in the material flow. And into that void, the circle in the middle, would be the exit of the metering auger or tube that is coming into that, and so that the additive goes into that head of material very, very effortlessly, and that makes sure that the head of material that is flooding that throat adapter never halts or never inhibits the accurate feeding of additive. We won't spend a great deal of time on this, but of course we have very ample literature support for this product line. Now, the pages that we show here are the spec sheet, and you can find these and any Conair spec sheet, conairgroup.com. This particular spec sheet talks mostly about the mechanical capabilities of the TrueFeed, and if you can see in the lower corner there of the first page, this actually talks about the standard control for the TrueFeed, which is a membrane switch, an LCD readout. And that is what is standard right now, and the option is the touchscreen, which we're going to talk more about. Inside the spec sheet, of course, you can see some nice little pictures of many of the options of the TrueFeed. The compressed air loading lid, for instance, some details on the dispensing cylinder, alarms, larger capacity hopper. Down in the lower left there, note the communications connection. So you can actually track material usage electronically through communications, through Ethernet, TCP, and so on. Here's a little bit more information on the choice of controls that we mentioned. The standard control is shown here on the left. Now, this is a membrane touchpad type of control, has a little LCD display, and you use navigation arrow buttons to make your way around the screen. And then there's a full keypad for entering your data. Now, that is what we refer to as the standard TrueFeed control, and it will remain the standard control up through about 2016, at which time we'll be going over to what is now the optional control shown on the right. And this is a touch screen. So this uses the ability to actually touch the screen, and when you touch numbers, for instance, a keypad will come up and you can easily enter them. This is a full color touch screen, very, very intuitive navigation. And the nice thing about this is this will control actually up to 4 feeders. Now, we strongly recommend that those 4 feeders, of course, are all on one throat. But this uses advanced communications and even comes with a little versatile mounting stand. This option is available now, and as we mentioned, this will become the standard control sometime in about 2016, maybe 2015. Now, when we talk about the choice of controls, either the standard membrane type or the optional TrueFeed touchscreen, let me point out one thing, that when you get 2 feeders, if you were going to use 2 feeders on the throat of the machine, either because you have 2 additives to meter or because you like to change back and forth between feeders without necessarily cleaning, you will automatically get the touchscreen. Why? Because the touchscreen can actually accommodate, as we said before, up to 4 feeders, but very, very easily it will accommodate 2 feeders. And when it accommodates 2 feeders, you can see on the screen there, it actually shows you both feeders on the screen, making data entry, making monitoring, and so forth as a very, very simple procedure for people on the floor. This is nothing special for Conair. This is structured as a configurable low lead time option. So simply asking for this will get you this in a very short order without any special ordering or any special processing at the factory. Here are some pictures of a TrueFeed touchscreen showing just a single feeder. And as you can see, we have a nice little illustration of a feeder right on there, very intuitive, very easy to recognize for users. And then each of the boxes showing numbers is actually something that can be pressed to change those numbers. It's literally that easy. So if you want to change the percentage of letdown, you simply touch that hopper, a keypad will come up, and you can change that. Now, what the a user will need to put in there is the data as you can see it. The control will analyze that data and obviously set the feeder into motion, providing very, very accurate metering with the data that is inputted by the user. And once again, for dual feeders, both of the feeders appear, and both of them have the relevant data associated with the individual feeders and the machine that they are mounted to, for instance, the shot weight, and so forth. When 3 or 4 feeders are used, which is actually kind of a mini blender, then this is the format of the screen. It shows all 4 feeders once again in a slightly more compact view, but the relevant data for each of that feeder's operation, which is the percentage of letdown from each of those feeders, is shown with each feeder, and then the machine data is shown across the bottom. So once again, a very, very clear layout, very, very intuitive, very friendly for the users. Now, we would be remiss in not mentioning that if somebody were to consider putting up to 4 feeders on a throat, we Conair would strongly recommend the use of one of our standard batch blenders, our TrueBlend batch blenders. It is much more economical, much easier to operate, and actually comes with a great deal more features for handling this many feeding devices. Because with 4 feeders on a feed throat, what you actually have is a mini blender, and we make blenders, and we make them very, very easy to use and a lot more economical than it would be to actually supply 4 independent feeders. Now, everything we've been talking about in reference to this new touchscreen control is actually also available in a spec sheet, specifically talking about the touchscreen control. So that can be reviewed, and many of what we just discussed will be enclosed in that spec sheet. And to get the full TrueFeed picture, use a standard TrueFeed brochure that has the membrane switch in it, and consider the touchscreen control, which basically describes the optional control for the TrueFeed. Now let's talk about that patented dispensing cylinder. Now first, this dispensing cylinder is used for fairly low throughputs when you have very, very minute quantities of additive to meter into the flow of main material going into your machine. The problem with standard augers and metering methods like augers is that there is a pulsing effect that we'll talk about in a moment. So for very small throughputs, Conair actually uses what we call a dispensing cylinder. The auger is way back in the cylinder, as you can see in the photograph down in the bottom right. And so the auger simply gets the material into the cylinder, and then actually the rotating effect of the cylinder is what meters the materials. And as you can see in the upper right there, we have the ability to actually meter a pellet at a time. On the illustration on the left there, you're able to see that we are able to very uniformly meter very, very precise amounts of free-flowing powder. And so this is a patented system, and this is really the highest possible accuracy. And of course, throughout this entire discussion, the gravimetric prowess of the feeder is what really is controlling the accuracy. We are keeping track of every minute particle of weight loss out of the hopper, so the TrueFeed is constantly monitoring itself and adjusting itself for the highest precision. And as we say at the bottom there, the dispensing cylinder has a very precise adjustable stepper motor, ensures that the additive output is accurate and consistent. And here is a very nice graph to show you how consistent. At the top of this picture, we show 2 different types of metering devices. A typical DC motor using a screw, and if you've used additive feeders, I'm sure you're very familiar with this type of technology. And then what is used on the TrueFeed, which is a stepper motor and a dispensing cylinder. Now the red line on the graph actually shows the measured performance of a metering screw in its attempt to reach a uniform feeding rate. And what happens as that auger rotates around, we get actually a push of extra material and then kind of a lean flow of material, and it's represented rather radically on that chart as the red line going up and down. Now, over the course of time, over the course of a shot. We have an average for that, and that's shown at the 0.5 mark there, the average for a screw feeder. Now, if that's where your set rate is, you're going to be taking a risk, because there is going to be lean times to the motion of that auger. There's going to be heavy times. So that is really an average. So unfortunately, many people are going to use that kind of a setting to actually achieve a 0.4 type of set point. They're going to have to go up to like a 0.5. They're going to be giving away material. You're going to be over metering. Now, when we get down to the green line, we can see that the simple rotation and only really the effects of friction on the material being dispensed creates very, very, very shallow valleys and peaks of the metering rate there, and our average is far lower. What does that mean to you? That means you do not have to meter as much material to get exactly the same results. And once again, as we said before, we are monitoring all of this with gravimetric precision. Over on the right there, we have an even more dramatic illustration of the differences between an auger and a dispensing cylinder. That little cylinder in the middle that is being dragged along by a stick is actually kind of custom made. It's been filled in the middle with material, and then the material is allowed to be dispensed out each side of that little cylinder. And we can see the auger dispensing on the left in short, high, and low bursts, and the uniformity of the dispensing on the right from the dispensing cylinder. Kind of proof right there, visual proof of the accuracy of the dispensing cylinder. Now, once again, this dispensing cylinder is used on very, very low throughputs where there is a high need for precision. On larger throughputs where it's not as critical, Conair still uses a traditional auger. And the peaks and valleys of that auger dispensing are far less dramatic. And once again, everything is monitored by gravimetrics to keep it accurate. And here is a little background on the metering selection when we would use either. In the top view there, you can clearly see an auger in the very top there that would mount to the stepper motor of the TrueFeed. And then towards the bottom, right below that, is the dispensing cylinder. No auger there except in the very tail end to get the material motivated, and then the dispensing cylinder would provide the actual metering. So the standard non-pulsing dispense cylinder is for all the way down to 0.02 to 5 grams per second. And for extrusion, that would go from 0.15 to 40 pounds an hour. If we go above that, we would use the auger, and it will go all the way from 0.5 to 50 grams per second, or all the way up to 397 pounds per hour. All these pieces, by and large, go in and out of the metering device with no tools. You can see the clamps on the motor, and these different metering devices plug into that and are able to be retrieved out of the TrueFeed very easily for cleaning, material changes, and so forth. Conair sales technicians actually use this spreadsheet for assessing a TrueFeed application, and all of the elements there shown in yellow is what we would fill in to actually line up the correct auger or dispensing cylinder, hopper size, and so forth with the application. The things we really need are the high and low percentages, the shot size, and the screw recovery, as you can see. The screw recovery is very important because that is the span of time in which the feeder will operate. So we know what kind of letdown we need against what kind of a shot size, but really importantly, we know how fast it needs to deliver that material, and that really relates directly to the screw recovery time. This spreadsheet is available, but if you simply have your application data, our salesman will help you with this by simply filling in the blanks, and the product will come to you ready to put to service on your processing machine. And once again, the real advantage to the touch screen for the TrueFeed is you only need one control for up to 2 feeders. So you could actually meter 2 additives, as we say, or 1 additive and 1 regrind. And because of its gravimetric monitoring system, if you run out of regrind, and of course the regrind has already been colored, and you were doing a coloring application, the TrueFeed is smart enough to change the rate of additive metering for the colorant to compensate for the lack of regrind. This is some serious power in a very, very small control. Everything that we've talked about here today is standard. We hope this has been informative for you. Once again, ConairGroup.com is where you will find all the literature and cut sheets for this, as well as instruction manuals and so forth. Please give us a call, and we thank you for your time and attention.